Welcome back. We are back. Voices of Sports. I am Michael Coleman, joined by Steve Jeltz, our other partner in this endeavor. We're going to get good at it eventually, y'all. Trust me. Is Michael Lebo, who coaches and has played as well. So the three of us, as we form the Voices of Sports, we've all played sports at a high level. Steve being the highest, of course, playing for the Philadelphia Phillies. And we have a special guest who will be joining us. But before we talk about him, we're going to give you a quick background about who we are. First of all, again, Michael Coleman, current sports director for a television station in Tyler, Texas, ABC. Been doing sports pretty much all my life. And when you are able to do something that you really love, you don't look at it as work. And with these gentlemen, I'm pretty sure they all will attest to that, being athletes. And Steve, let the folks know about yourself.
My name's Steve Jeltz. I played with University of Kansas. Played in the backfield with Mike Coleman back in high school in Lawrence, Kansas. And as he was telling you, he's not going to tell you everything he did. He's in the Hall of Fame in Coffeyville, Kansas now. He taught me how to tackle. I was a freshman or a sophomore, and he was a junior, and he came through the holes. My first experience, and I went in there halfway, and he let me know this ain't how you tackle because he rung my bell. On them, but I played at the University of Kansas baseball, and then signed in the June draft in 1980 with the Philadelphia Phillies, and played 2.5 years in minor leagues, and then was called up in '83 and was on the National League Championship team in '83. I had 8.5 years of big league experience. Played with the Kansas City Royals to finish it out.
Mr. Lebo, let them know about you.
I grew up here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where we're at now, and this is my first year coaching high school ball. Head coach at Susquehanna High School. 4 years prior, was coaching at Penn State University, Mont Alto. Went to the College World Series 3 times in a row. And then before I got into coaching, played some pro ball down in Australia, and also played at Millersville, and then junior college right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, Volunteer State.
Now, the three of us, we don't maintain that we know it all, but what we're going to do throughout our different broadcasts is share our life experiences as an athlete. Michael and Steve are on the forefront. They're working around young athletes. Doing what I do for a living. I'm around young athletes every day. So we don't know it all, but we have a pretty good idea of what we're talking about in terms of young people. And that's what we're trying to aim. We're trying to aim to the young people and talk to them about how they should conduct themselves or how they may want to conduct themselves. We're not trying to tell anybody what to do. Meanwhile, joining us here, we have Tony Longmire, who, by the way, I looked you up, Tony. We share a same middle name, Eugene. So, hey, powers to you, brother. And Tony is a former major leaguer with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He broke in with them, went over to the Phillies. So we have 2 Phillies on with us today. And Tony, welcome to the broadcast, my man. Mr. Jeltz has told me so much about you. I'm looking forward to hearing about you, hear what you have to say.
Man, thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's just get right to the jump of it. The game today, you and Steve are retired veterans from MLB. I know you both are still a part of it, kind of like the arm of Major League Baseball. Your thoughts on how the game was played today?
You know, it's very interesting with all these different rules that they have today. I was able to catch a game the other day, and I was happy with no more shifting. As far as the pitch clock, I'm trying to get used to it and adjust, but it's kind of iffy for me. Pitching up against a clock means that you have to go home at a certain time. And if you have to deliver at a certain time as a runner, then that enables him to go at a certain time. So it's a lot of nuances about it I'm trying to figure out and understand. But as of right now, the pitch clock, I like the speed of the pace of the game. They sped up the game. I think that's real good. But as far as the clock, me being a baseball player, I don't know. And Judge is still out on that.
Well, it's like Jeltz and I were talking. A lot of times when you put in rules, the way you put them in on day one, by year 2, it's not done that way anymore because you get to tweak it, fine tune it, and I think that's what you're talking about. Because I think the clock should be more for the pitchers than for the batter. That's what but you penalize the batter for not being in the box at a certain time. I'm not down with that. I don't mind the rules, but I think it's kind of like the college football playoff format. 4 teams. You knew when they said we're going to do 4 teams for a playoff, it wasn't going to work. And now, about a year from now or 2 years from now, they're going to expand it to 12. You got to have much more of a sample size. And do you think the fans, how are they going to accept this?
My impression is the fans right now, they like the pace of the game. They're more encouraged by the pace of the game, I think, as we get into the season. And you see a lot of games start to come down to this pitch clock where it factors in more and wins and losses really count. I think we'll start to have a different change of opinion. When your team is penalized for it and you don't quite understand it, you're going to feel differently than that pitch clock. So I'm really waiting to see that first game, see it happen in the first live game where it affects the real stats, and then we're going to see a different change.
Michael, you're coaching young players. Do you think we'll see this trickle down to the level of ball that you're coaching?
They're talking about it in college already. They've already implemented a clock between innings. So you got 2 minutes to change offense and defense, your pitcher to go through his warm-up pitches and be ready and be on the mound, ready to deliver the first pitch within 2 minutes. That's already implemented across all of college baseball. You'll probably see it in Division I, the pitch clock. I would be willing to bet if it goes successful in the MLB this year, you'll see it in college baseball within 2 years.
Steve, does it belong in college baseball?
I don't think a clock belongs in baseball, period. I'm just one of those. I see a lot. The game's 90% mental. So, you have to prepare. And I'm watching pitchers at this point, and we're speaking with Ray Burris tomorrow, a former major league pitcher for, I think, 17 years or so, 17 seasons. But, we had a short conversation about it. And I agreed with the fact that, these pitchers are having trouble right now throwing strikes. And now you're going to rush them and speed them up. It's a matter of concentrating, knowing your hitters, hitting corners. Right now, Major League Baseball, they're throwing balls down the middle of the plate consistently. And that didn't happen when we played. Tony will tell you that, you go up to the plate, it's inside corner, outside corner, every now and then if they make a mistake, you better not miss it. And then again, if you have a hole and you can't hit a certain pitch, I promise you every team in the league knows that. Until you learn how to hit it, that's all you're going to see. What do you think, Tony?
That's absolutely it, too. And you hit it on the head. I mean, it was about making adjustments as a hitter. I mean, for us, if you had a shift on and you couldn't hit the other way, you were going to go back to the minor leagues and you were going to learn how to do that.
Right.
You weren't going to hit 200 with 15 home runs and be in the major leagues. Them were lifetime AAA players.
Right.
That's where you will see them guys that had the big home runs, but they could only hit 200.
Right. And couldn't do anything else. And that home run thing is a myth. That's not how you win championships. You win championships by moving runners, moving on. It's about being smart on a baseball field. And there are a lot of, kind of like the fact that they took out the designated hitter. They put it in the National League. That just broke my heart because that takes so much strategy out of the game. When you come up late in the ball game, you have a pitcher coming up to hit, and he's pitching the game well. What do you do? And then you doing a double switch and putting the pitcher in the last person that made the out. You put that new pitcher into that spot, and you bring your pinch hitter in to hit. So it changes everything. I mean, I'm watching what's going on, and I just don't like it.
Did you guys see the clip of Max Scherzer using the time clock to his advantage? He got on the mound real quick right at the start of the clock, was set, ready to go, so it forced the batter to get in quick, and he just stood there from the windup, and he got down to like 2-3 seconds left, and the hitter called time. So the hitter steps out, Scherzer gets right back out on the mound. He's waiting for him. As soon as his second foot gets in the box, boom, quick pitches him. So he made him wait about 18 seconds before the hitter had to call time. And then as soon after the time, he was there was no chance of this dude getting a hit off of Scherzer.
And you know what? I didn't see it, and I'll look it up. I like that. So, okay, if this is how we're going to have to play this, I'm going to make it work to my advantage, and that's
exactly what's going to happen.
and good for him. And I think, I mean, and the thing is, I think these rules were implemented not because of the fans. Fans been watching baseball for over 100 years. I think it's television. I think the television executives are like, can we make the game shorter? Can we, what can we do? I mean, they're paying the freight. They're paying MLB all this money to broadcast those games. And I really believe television has had an input on all these rule changes because they're trying to conform. They're trying to make it a TV show. Television executives used to TV shows being a half hour long, 2 hours long, whatever, but not 2 hours and 45 minutes. They don't have a program that's 2:45. They don't have a program that's 3 minutes, 3 hours and 10 minutes. But in baseball, you can't. Everybody else has a clock. But in baseball, I really believe this is what they're trying. They're trying to control and reduce that time to be a television show. And I think you're going to find out over a period of time. And A, they're going to tweak these rules eventually, but B, the executives in baseball of television are going to have to realize it's a sport, it's a game. We can't really manipulate the time of the game from what it originally was set out to do. And I think too often, because television networks pay the freight, they get too much of a say in this. And just like you said earlier when we were talking on the phone, you got to go to the cameras and the monitors to make a call. How are you going to cut that time out? You going to put a time limit on that?
Yeah, and to that point, the game is the game. And go back to what you were talking about, Mike. You come back to when we played. Fans came out to the ballpark 2 hours before the game. And they want to watch batting practice, get some autographs, interact with the players. Now they don't even take infield, do they? They like to come out and watch us take infield. So they plan on this being an all-day experience. Now it's like no batting practice, no infield, and in and out. Fans don't come to a ballpark with the intention of I'm going to be out of here in 2 hours. When they come to a baseball game, they came to spend the day. And I think that's more beneficial for the fans as well as the players and playing the game and the owners, because they're in there, buying concessions that entire time while they're in there during that time. So I think you're right, Mike, that I think it's being manipulated by the media, the media owners, and they're trying to make it a TV show, and it's just not a TV show; it's a sport.
Let's shift gears. Oh, go
Mike,
ahead.
you
Mike,
hit on something big time. I like what you hit on, Mike, because like you was talking, like we were talking about, this baseball is the only sport without a clock. It's the top, as far as the top three sports. So now they want to be able to put it in a time slot. They want to be able to slide this 2 hour and 30-minute game into a time slot, and it might go 2:45. Where prior to this, your games were going to be anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours.
In the American League, 4.
Yes, because you had the DH. Also, Steve, you hit on something too. When I broke in with the Phillies, I was an extra outfielder. A lot of my work came in, I was a pitch hitter. So being that I was a younger pitcher, I pitch hit early. Meaning if you're having a bad start and, that third inning, your bat came around, hey, I was going to get in there and pitch if you were doing bad. I was going to pitch hit if you were doing bad. So with the DH, that takes a lot of jobs out of play. Normally, like you said, we had in the National League. So National League was more of a strategy league. The American League, let's just go get them. Let's go score 6 runs first. And, basically that's what it was. Where National League, we tried to strategize and keep it within so many runs, where now I think you're not going to see many people on the bench being used like they used to be used. And
another thing about this time situation, if you were like a Mickey Mantle fan, a Babe Ruth fan, Reggie Jackson, Hank Aaron, you would love nothing more than to watch them play however long it takes for them to play, because you're watching greatness out there on the field. Is what you're watching. You're not going there to get a snapshot and call it a day. I mean, because what's going to happen is, and it's probably already happening, you don't hear people talk about players today the way they used to be talked about back in, from our era. I mean, you could talk all day about Hank. You could talk all day about Pete, Mickey, Babe, all those kind of guys. And I can't wait to go to the ballpark. No one's ever said, okay, I can't wait to go home because I'm ready to get up out of here. No one's ever said that as a baseball fan. And I really believe if they had the fans' input, whoever those decision makers, if they had the fan input, you might have a different outcome. You might not have a clock. And another thing about baseball that they do better than anybody else, the nostalgia of baseball is better than any other sport. They do the best job of keeping records. The Cooperstown thing, all of that, the baseball, all of that. So it's like you are promoting these players, but you're also promoting getting them in and getting them out in a certain amount of time. And you can't contradict the flow of what you're trying to do. I mean, if you want these fans to come out, then let them stay and enjoy the game. I've never been to an 18-inning game. I've reported on them.
I played in one.
Okay.
21 innings.
I mean, you're seeing greatness, and kudos to those that don't have to be at work the next day. And for those, baseball is a sport of leisure. It really is. And so I just think, like I said, there will be some tweaking done. It's a sport that's been around longer than anything else, and now you're going to try and make changes. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about athletes who are banking, who are just boom, 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 but they keeping their old ways in their system. I'm talking about the NBA's Memphis Grizzlies, Ja Morant.
Oh, my.
Baller.
Yep.
Right? Wow. This cat is guaranteed $231 million. He's got a signature shoe. Memphis is up and coming. They're still young, but they're up and coming. But he's the guy. But yet, he's going to tangle with a 17-year-old kid because I think this kid insulted his mom or something like that with this posse. And then he's going to be at a nightclub, shirt off, and just dangling this gun he's got.
I just saw that clip.
Yeah, right? That is not your life anymore, dude. That's not where you are. I mean, that's not where you are.
And that goes – I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, Jelps.
And that goes to where you came from and how you were raised. And that comes back to us at Primal Sports, what we're doing. A lot of these kids don't get that education and upbringing to where they have the morals and they know where to draw a line. I'm not sure. I mean, for us, it's hard to understand how you could be making $230 million and have a contract and have endorsements and be in that same lifestyle and doing ridiculous things that are going to jeopardize all that. And then, the other thing goes back to role models. We spoke last night to a group of kids and we're talking about role models. I told everybody, I said, my role model is my mom and dad. And, we at Primal Sports, that's who we are to you, role models. But when you look at these major league athletes and NBA athletes, NFL athletes, they can't be your role models. You don't know who they are. So I reach out to these parents and say, hey, get a grip on this thing. Be control of your kids, because the only way they're going to make it is not by highlighting and Facebooking and doing ridiculous things, but having integrity and having respect for your opponents instead of embarrassing them. I'll tell you, Tony, what happens if we hit a home run and rock the cradle while we run around the bases? What's going to happen?
Yeah, we were different era. And normally what would happen to us, Jokes, is you might hit the home run, but they would hit somebody substantial in the lineup so that person would come to you.
Right.
And jam you up so they wouldn't hit somebody weak. They're going to hit somebody that's big on that team so that they come to Justin and say, hey, man, you can't do that here.
That's right. And you're going to get one, too. So there might be two people getting hit,
Yeah.
And so that's just the course of the game. I'm watching, where they took the rule out where you can't take out a guy on a double play. I spent my career in the middle of that infield. That's part of the game. We're worrying about injuries and what have you. I said, you will learn how to play second base and shortstop and get out of the way. But, we used to get a bonus for taking the guy out and breaking up a double play. That extends the inning. So it's part of the game. And then you saw Pete Rose in the All-Star game. And
that's just it.
Ran over the catcher in the All-Star game. So that's just how we played.
Well, and that's just it. If you want to be aggressive in the game.
That's right.
Now, Michael, when you have your young players, I mean, I don't know if you have anything to worry about with those young men, but what are you hoping the young men can get from today's athletes? Because you can't preach to kids. You couldn't preach to us. You just kind of you just kind of knew the difference between right and wrong. So how do you deal with young people today in terms of getting them on the straight and narrow and to stay focused on what's at hand?
I think you got to be really selective about who they pick to emulate. On the field is one thing, what the camera shows on the field, and 99% of it is all positive and it's playing the game hard, no matter what sport it is. But then when the kids now have access to all these athletes' personal lives, and like you said about Ja, he's not posting the smartest things online for the whole world to see, and you got little kids looking up to you. So you got to be able to filter that out, because a 15-year-old boy, they're very impressionable. They don't, most of the time, they don't want to listen to their parents. So who are they listening to? They're listening to their friends, and then what they see online of the people they emulate. So it's hard. You just got to remind them that what you see is not reality. When you see it from a phone or from the TV, it's no one's reality, because you can't pull a gun just anywhere you want in this country. You got to remember, this is still America, and you pull a gun in this country in a lot of places, things are going to turn really bad. So that you can't go around doing that. And I just, as a coach, I have to be sensitive to the fact of understanding that what these kids see, they think is the truth. And I got to just remind them. I try to daily remind them, like, hey, man, you here at practice, this is your escape from the entire world, and spend these 2 hours and forget about everything and just focus on what makes you happy. And just try to be the best person you can be when you leave here, and deal with the issues at hand from a common sense perspective.
Well, you're battling social media too, all right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's probably a knucklehead or two back in the day that pulled what Ja did, but nobody see it but 12 people.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, somebody's going to see this. Oh, he's about that life. We're going to find him. We know who he is. If he's about that life, let's go find out. And they know he's loaded. So you're opening yourself up to be a target, and you don't even know it. Tony?
I totally agree with that. It's amazing that today's time that we do some of the things we do. I remember Charles Barkley in the 90s. He had a commercial. And in this commercial, he said, "I am not a role model." I want to say it was during the time the Michael Jordan commercial. And he basically came out and said, "I am not a role model." And what he was saying is, just because I play basketball at this level, that doesn't make me a role model, because you don't know what I do behind the scenes. You don't know who I am behind the scenes. And that's what he was trying to tell you, is you need to know who the people are behind the scenes before you choose them as a role model. I was lucky. I played with some good players, man. I had some good, I would say, live role models. I had a guy by the name of Kenny Howe who took me under his wing when I got to Philadelphia, and he was a live role model. He was right there with me. He taught me how to be a big leader. Mariano Duncan. I had people that taught me what to do and what not to do. Ricky Jordan. These are people that they're near and dear to me, because they took the time to teach me how to be a professional athlete. Not just a professional athlete, but I'm going to be more precise, how to be a Black professional athlete.
Right.
Indeed. And it's funny you say that, Tony, just to back you up on that part of that, because you named names. Kenny Howe. Kenny Howe was there with me when I was there. And then Ricky was a rookie when he came up, and I kind of took him under my wing. So see, that's how those things, you giving it back, because when Tony came in, Ricky was there, and Ricky already had it. And then he brought it to Tony. And then Tony, I'm sure he was a mentor to some of the other guys. I had Rick Shue come up. I had Charlie Hayes at third base. A lot of different guys who came through the game. But when they came in, it was my job to teach them. And like he said, as a Black athlete, what to expect and how to react to it. I told you, my dad told me, Command Sergeant Major, 47 years in the Army, World War II draftee, Korea twice, Vietnam. And what he went going through the Army, ended up in the Pentagon and the White House. And he said, he said, you know what you're dealing with. He said, you're going to have to be faster, better, stronger, and work harder. He said, you still might not get that position. He said, but I better never hear it come out of your mouth that the color of your skin was the reason why you didn't succeed.
Right.
You know what you're dealing with. Get out there and deal with it. So, that's kind of what these kids walk around kind of entitled with a chip on their shoulder, and they're watching the wrong things. And like you said, Mike, social media plays a big role in that. But these kids it starts at home, and at Primal Sports, we're trying to be that home to the ones that don't have it.
And part of the problem that lends itself to those situations, there are a lot of people with authority who are afraid to butt in.
Yep.
Who are afraid to tell that aspiring young athlete or that aspiring person who's got something going on, but they walk around with a chip on their shoulder. There's nobody saying, listen, check me out here. You are good at what you do. You are headed to places that you never even thought about, but there's a way to go about doing it that way. And that's what they're not being taught. That's not what they're not being talked to about, because you have people in authority who are afraid to call the shots on someone who is up and coming and who's got a shoe contract and, all that kind of stuff right there. As my screen is doing funny things on me here. But then that's where the school comes in. Somebody, the principal, you can't turn the other way. You cannot turn the other way. You've got to be in that kid's life. Because I don't know. And Michael, you work with kids. I'd say once that child gets past the age of 13, if he's already on the road of a collision, it might be too late.
It's tough to bring them back, and the only way I can do it is almost through tough love in terms of verbiage and how you communicate to them. You can't communicate to them like they're a child anymore. You have to communicate to them like they're a man. Even at 13, 14 years old, if you see that they're acting like men and they're making grown men choices, the only way you can communicate to them is like you would another grown man. And that's the only way I've seen to be able to relate to the kids who look like they're going to head towards a collision.
That's interesting. Yeah, to be honest, I was that kid. I didn't speak much about my background, but growing up, I was strictly that kid. And what I mean by that, I dropped out of high school. I didn't graduate high school, to be honest. As we speak, I'm going to school right now online in the process of obtaining my high school diploma.
Good for you, man.
It was something I didn't do at that time. I was a hardhead. I was a knucklehead. I lost my father when I was 7. He committed suicide. So here I was, an angry kid dealing with a physically abusive stepfather. So I dropped out of school and I had all this anger, but I was good in sports. But I was Ja Morant, and for the sake of God, he sent the person that knew me real well. And I just happened to walk in the bar at 18. And I went in there and this guy said, I've been looking for you, man. And I said, for real? He's like, yeah, I want you to play on my team. He said, I think you can get drafted. I said, I don't care about getting drafted. What I care about is I'm doing wrong. And my grandmother, she wants to see me do something right. So that inspired me to play. And from that, I got drafted in the 8th round by the Pittsburgh Pirates. But for the sake of me, I was Ja Morant totally. I was that thug. That's just, full disclosure. If you look back, that was me. So for the sake of God, putting me in professional baseball and then putting the right people to show me that this is not what we do.
Yeah,
So I think there's a lot of hope. And like you said, Mike, you have to talk to them on their terms. You can't babysit them.
Uh-uh.
You have to be honest with them and let them know that this is real. This is real life.
Yeah.
Well, so let me ask you this, a follow-up. I was going to ask you if you got it when you got drafted, but obviously you got it before you got drafted. Yeah, you realized before you got drafted, otherwise you wouldn't have got drafted. So did that motivate you even more?
No, I didn't get it until, like I said, I didn't get it. Honestly, one of the people that gave it to me, my story it's Barry Bonds. When I got drafted by the Pirates in '86, I met Barry Bonds. They were down in the instructional league. And me and him kind of had a run-in, and he didn't know me from a can of paint, and I didn't know him. And he kind of said some things to me, and he kind of let me know. He's like, man, you're talented, man. What is you doing? What are you doing? You're going the wrong way. And I'm like, I didn't know who he was, but I knew who he was.
Right.
Like, we're talking Barry Bonds in 86. The only thing you knew about him at that time was Arizona State. So when he started talking to me, I'm like, oh, you know, it kind of make you look behind you like. And then I started, when people started to say it enough, I started to believe in it. But it took me probably 2 years into professional baseball. 86, I played as a rookie in Gulf Coast League. 87, I was in the South Atlantic League. And after that year of being able to compete, because I didn't know if I can compete, I never played high school. Never played high school baseball. Only high school sport I played was basketball. So I didn't know. I didn't really know until, like I said, that second year. Then I started having an idea, and I started to change the way I maneuver.
See, you were in the atmosphere, yet you all had a common goal, and that was a commonality. You know, Barry Bonds, all of you cats. You know, you look at one because all you have is each other.
Yeah.
You know, the distractions outside of that, you know, were just that because you knew inside. Because I've always felt like when you were an athlete, there's a brotherhood, there's a unity, all that kind of stuff. And there might be somebody who's wayward, but everybody's going to step in and try to help that person.
Absolutely.
That person, yeah, and that person is coming from inside. Whereas that individual, and maybe you were like this, you were jaded. You know, something, you know, you lost your father, and you sound like your stepfather wasn't a cool guy at all in terms of how he helped raise you. But when you got into an atmosphere with other cats who were like you trying to make it in this sport, you was able to go, wow, these guys care about me. And sometimes we need that kind of support for somebody to say, I don't care what you did last Tuesday. All I know is you were mental enough and strong enough to come here to work out. We going from there. And kudos to you for sharing that because, you know, you need to, and maybe you do, talk to young people and let them know, hey, I've been where you at. You know, because we all been somewhere. We all been somewhere. You don't know when, but you all been somewhere. And I just think that's to me. I've been around sports all of my life. That's why I do what I do for a living, because it is a diversion from the real world. And when that score says 4-3, game over. Ain't no recounts. Ain't no replays after the game. The game's over. If you want to redeem yourself, do it in the next game because you get another chance.
Yep, that's it.
Absolutely. I have a couple of kids I mentor, and that's what I try to teach them. And what I do with my hitters is I teach them, I tell them take the game in 10 at bats. So I don't want you to get too high if you go 0 for 4, because if you got three more games, then you can go 2 for, you can go 0 for 4, 0 for 2, and then you can go 4 for 4. Now all of a sudden we're back at 400. So you take it in 10 at bats. So you try to keep them positive. You know, let them know there's room to fail, and we can always make progress. But we're going to fail.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the number one thing that you have to teach kids is you're going to fail.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you get back. I'm going to teach you how to get back up, but we're going to fail.
Right.
But you only lose when you don't get back up.
There you go.
That's it. Absolutely,
that's the only time. That's when the game is over.
That's when the game's over.
I've kind of been thinking after listening to Tony talk and what Steven and I have been working on, just some projects and getting a physical location up, but how impactful the right atmosphere can be to anyone, any person who's going through a struggle in their life, no matter what it is, and why isn't there already been an atmosphere created across the entire nation that just helps and kids can lean on and be like, man, I got something here that just helps me get to where I need to go and pulls me out of them dark places. Like Why isn't that all across the country through sports?
I would love to see that, and I would love to be a part of that.
Well, that's what we're doing, Tony. That's what we're doing at Primal Sports. That was our mission. That's part of it. I told him, I said, winning ball games is not what we're concentrating on. We're concentrating on developing character. And what you see in major sports now with the taunting and the bat throwing and the celebrations, we don't do that at Primal Sports. It's unacceptable. Like Mike, when we played football in high school, if you spiked the ball, it was a penalty.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that.
No,
Things have changed so much, but when did that become part of the game? Winning is a championship attitude. It's not just about how you played the game, it's how you thought the game and how you respect your opponent. And that's part of winning, and so that character that we have to teach is probably our most important mission. And because a lot of these kids don't have like what Tony went through. A lot of these kids are there. I was fortunate. My mom and dad, Command Sergeant Major, he policed the whole neighborhood. So everybody was scared of that. But, I had that. And he took care of a lot of my friends that I grew up with. They would come to him. I can tell you a quick story. They had, when my dad was on his way out in 2013, they had right across the street where we lived 44 years in that house. I was taking care of him. And I saw a bunch of people over at the park. They were having a family reunion or something. Well, I know everybody in Lawrence, Kansas. So I just stopped over there. I hadn't been there in years. So I stopped over there, and it was a bunch of my guys I grew up with in school. And they asked, he said, well, where's your dad at now? And I said, he's still over there across the street. They left that. There was probably 150 people over there. And there was 7 of them got in the car that I grew up with in the neighborhood when we were in grade school. And they got in the car and went over to cross the street to see my dad. And they walked in the room, and I told my dad because we all looked different from that time. And I told my dad who they were, and it brought tears to my dad's eyes. And they sit in there and talked to my dad for about an hour and a half, and that made his day because they respected how strict he was, but the guidance. They said, Mr. Jeltz, we always had a place to fall. We knew if we messed up, we were going to hear from you. While at home they weren't getting that.
Right.
So it's important. It's very important.
Well, and I'm not going to beat up on social media, but when we live in a world where likes are important,
yeah,
and it's like you get likes from people you don't even know. They not your friends, but you're getting likes and you're getting followers and all this kind of stuff, and that's such a, because those folks who count on likes, they're going to be disappointed in life. Mm-hmm. They're going to realize that I say the wrong time, but maybe the right time that, oh, wait a minute, I don't know these people.
And those likes didn't carry that much.
Yeah, weight. I mean, we all probably, if we're on social media, we all get somebody that wants to be our friend. I don't know you.
Right.
I might even say, do I know you personally? Well, I know the answer because I know that, well, no, I just want to be your friend. Well, why you want to be my friend? I got real friends I actually, high five with and shake hands with. I don't have virtual friends. I don't look for virtual friends. And I think we've come so far away from the generation that we're familiar with. And I know things change. I understand that. But there's never anybody or any authority to step in and say, slow it down. Because by that time, it's out of hand. You can't put the toothpaste back into the tube because it's out of control. And then when you have these, you have like, okay, say Ja Morant, okay, young guy. His parents are probably young, and he's probably mimicking what they were doing back in the 80s and 90s, and so that's that's the trouble with the youthful people today, because if you told me or Jeltz back in the day that we got invited to somebody's camp, I'd be going out to work out that next day. The camp ain't till next Thursday. But I'd be out there the next day because I want to go and be ready to show what I got. Yep. But I think now they take it, well, I'm going to go. So, okay, I'm going, cool. No, I'm going to go out and work out. It might be midnight. I'm going to work my butt off.
Yes, we did that.
Because you want to be representative of why they picked you to come to a camp. And I think today, these young guys, these young athletes, they have it so much easier. And again, I'm not complaining. It's just that whatever foundation we had to build, they're already 10 steps ahead. And that's what the problem is. They don't have the hunger. Used to be, you pay an athlete a bunch of money, he begins to taper off because he's not hungry anymore. Once you lose that hunger, you start losing respect from people around you.
That's right.
That's real talk.
Yeah.
That's right. That's real talk. Hey, T Long, you got to get on the plane?
No, I'm gonna go in a minute.
Okay.
I got
a couple minutes.
one
All
more
right,
thing
good,
I was
good.
just thinking of, as we talked about that atmosphere and social media. Like, what if we could come up with a way to use social media for good to build an atmosphere to pull kids from dark places through sports, right? Obviously, social media nowadays and TV, and you understand it, Mike, that's the only way you can connect to an entire nation of kids, right? It's impossible for Tony to go to every high school in every city and speak to these kids and share his story in person. But how can we use, our connections and the people we know to build a platform and build an atmosphere where we can reach all these troubled kids, and whether they have access to pick up the phone and call Tony or a Steve or a Mike or a Charles Barkley, and they'll spend 2 minutes on the phone with them just talking to them, or like, how can we create that atmosphere for these kids that are in dark places?
Well, what you do is, and you guys know it like I know, people. We all know people who are trying to reach the youth of today, and those, like I would reach out to Thomas Hollywood Henderson. He and I got to be friends when I lived in Austin, and you all know about Thomas Henderson's story. I remember the first time I met Thomas Henderson, he was speaking at a class at University of Texas. And he was so flamboyant, I thought he was still doing cocaine. I was like, dang, I thought he quit snorting. Because I realized, well, shoot, if this is how he really is in real life, and it was, he didn't need those substance. He didn't need any stuff because he was already that.
Yes.
But so he's a good guy. And the first time I realized the seriousness of his new journey, at that time it was new, was when we were golfing and someone said, "Hey, Hollywood." I said, "Hey, I'm just Thomas now. I'm not Hollywood Henderson anymore. I'm Thomas Henderson." That was eye-opening for me. And every year in November, he celebrates his sobriety. He's probably 40 years old now, sobriety-wise. But I remember he had a big old banquet in Austin. Tom Landry was still living at the time. Of course, he played under Coach Landry. Some of the older Cowboys were there and whatnot. And I was surprised he invited Tom Landry because I knew the rift they had. Real quick, he had a book called Out of Control. And that's what he was. And he's one of the first athletes in pro sports to be discovered to do substance stuff. That was like, not the bennies, not the pep pills, but cocaine, the street drugs and all that. And Tom Landry, as he said in his book, didn't understand me. He said, "You know how I know this is because," or Bill Walsh, because I got traded to San Francisco. And then I got traded to Miami. He said, "Now, anybody in their right mind would know Miami would be the last place you would send."
Yeah.
Right. He said, "That's what I knew." He said, "That's when I knew they didn't get it." He said, "But Don Shula got it, the former coach, the former late coach of the Dolphins, because Thomas was ordered to go to AA meetings." Well, when he got to Miami, Don Shula knew about his situation. Don Shula's like, "I want to go to these AA meetings with you because I believe you are the tip of the iceberg of what we coaches are going to have to deal with in the future. And I want to know how to handle it." And if Coach Shula couldn't go, Mrs. Shula would go. So there is somebody right there, that man right there, Coach Shula took the time to go to these AA meetings just to get ready for what he was about to deal with the younger athletes. And I think today that's what is not going on, because the coaches today are like 32 years old. They're about as young as the young guys messing up.
Right.
Absolutely.
So we don't have coaches like that who are showing a personal interest in you and your recovery. And that took him a long way. And then he won the lottery twice. Twice he won the lottery. literally the Texas Lotto. So, I mean, I just think there are coaches out there that could do more, but you got to talk to the agent first. Got to talk to Nike first. That's just the world. That's the world they're in today. So everybody's shooting them stuff, but they don't know who to go to because they're kind of being enabled at the same time. And that's where we fight against. Okay, this is Voices of Sports. Michael Liebel, Steve Jeltz, Michael Coleman. Mr. Longmire joined us as well. Hope to have more conversation with you, T, because you got a lot to offer, man. And I appreciate Steve reaching out to you. And for those of you, we're going to be popping up. You'll be hearing more and more about us. Listen to what we're talking about. What we're trying to talk about our own life experiences as athletes and what we see today that is not being addressed. And we're not the problem solvers. We're folks who are trying to come up with a solution on how can we fix it, how can we tweak it, because there's nothing more fun than being an athlete and being able to compete against the best. And when it's all said and done with, if you lose or on the short end, you just get yourself up, dust yourself off, and get back after it. Thanks for watching, everybody. We're closing the show for now.
All right. Perfect, gentlemen.
Man, anytime you guys